You'd only when you go when you give me the green button, then I would see the slide text to pick and could look into the slides.
Okay, so now I've just given you I clicked the green button for you.
Actually, you have to stop sharing the slide, and then you can grant Christian the ability to share.
Okay. Okay.
Ah, yeah. Now I can select something. So like I'll select GM admin, clicking share, and now I can hop through them.
Okay, so we will try. It's not a good day because we're very busy for this session, but okay. So I think we should start now. So I'm gonna share my screen. Yeah. The window. So hi everyone. So you are in the ACE meeting. Logan is my co-chair is gonna reach me in a few moments. He had an emergency meeting, so he's gonna come later. You have the Notewell in case you've never read those or you were not aware of those Notewell meetings. So please have a look to that. And we're looking for a minute takers, so we already have Christian, but if anyone else is willing to help him, it's more than welcome. So do we have a second minute taker?
Yeah, I can help. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Goran. I guess it's Goran. So just be informed that we have a new code of conduct at the IETF. I don't think we ever had any problems in this working group before, but I mean, we need to make the conversation professional, and it's quite standard behavior. So if any one of you is noticing something, please let me know. I would be happy to act on that. So we do have a pretty busy agenda. So I am going to be quite short, and I'm going to ask the other presenters to remain quite short. The goal of this meeting is clearly to end up every document that we have in Working Group Last Goal or that are going to be in the Working Group Last Goal in a few days. So that's the priority for the first priority for that meeting. The second priority is about adopting new work and to have those discussions. And that's it. So where we are with this working group, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 documents. So it's GoApp East, waiting for DTLS. We have the DTLS authorized, the OAuth OAuth params, and OSCO profiles, which are the main ACE framework that are in the RFC queue. So congratulations to all the people that have been committed to that. We have 3 drafts into the ISG evaluation. So that's the AIF, the CMPv2, and the MQTT TLS profile. One comment I'd like to say, and mostly to make it very clear to everyone, is that the CMPv2 draft needs to progress through the RFC editor in parallel with some other documents in LAMPS, mostly because they are they have they do share a registry at the IANA, so that's one of the reasons. Yeah, so, and we do have 2 documents in working group last goal. So that's the key group comms and the co-op EP, and a few other working group documents. Among those, the key group com OS core that is going to be moved in working group last goal, hopefully in the few next days. That said, I'm just wondering if Ben, our AD, is willing to add anything, if he has any question, or if anyone has any comment to say to our AD. So please. Is Ben on the queue? I don't see him on the queue. So has anyone to say anything about to our AD? No. So I suggest that we move on. Maybe we could start with the EP document. So I'm going to ask Dan to go to the queue and to ask for, oh, okay. Peter tell me that Ben has left the meeting, so he will probably come later on, and feel free to catch him on Gather, for example. So Dan, do you want me to present the slides, or do you want to present the slides yourself?
If you can please present the slides, and I can just indicate when to move forward, please.
Okay, so I am gonna do that. So I stop sharing my my screen. I am asking the pre-slides, and let me.
So
please confirm.
Yes, sorry.
Do you see the slides?
Yes, I can see the slides.
Interesting, because I don't see them. So you see the slides, because my problem is that I don't see them.
You might need to switch around on one of those top icons, presentation view, gallery view. One of those should give you slides.
So I have a share screen, presentation view, maybe. Oh, okay, good.
So basically, shall I start?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No, thank you. So in this version, we have integrated all the comments and discussions with Christian, with Karsten, and we have given it also a little bit of restructuring, and we understand that we have now the version that we expected after all these discussions, and we also added a annex regarding how to use co-op with TLS, which is something that was commented, but we did not add something concrete until now, but we added in an annex. So if we can go to the next slide, we have the summary of the main topics we have been adding to or modified in some meaningful way in regard with the last version. So we added some discussion about the discovery of the authenticator. We added some of the recommendation from Christian to send the resource in the first message. We are also sending the sender ID and recipient ID for OSCOR instead of calculating it as part of the derivation of the material, also to improve the way of choosing these identifiers. We confirm the use of OSCOR for doing the key confirmation of co-op IP. We also added some consideration for the use of proxies And basically, we gave a definition of a superstructure to carry some information for the negotiations. And finally, we show the current flow of operation, and we give some comments in this presentation regarding how the TLS can be used in the annex. So in the next slide, please. Basically, for the discovery of the IP authenticator, since CoAP is expected to be used in different IoT environments, we leave it out of the scope, but we added some discussion of how can this be done. We understand that CoAP brings some tools to the table for resource discovery, and we are using that as part of CoAP, but in terms of getting the information of the IPv6 of the border router or the entity in the domain with which the IP authenticator is going to talk to, we leave that out of the scope, but there are different approaches that could be considered depending on the deployment scenario, such as DHCP or multicast DNS. So next slide, please. So one of the modifications we make to the flow operation to save bytes over the link is to send in the first message from the IP peer to the authenticator is to send in the payload the URI of the resource that is being created in the IoT device for attending the next exchange. So this saves the flow operation from having to use the well-known URI, the CoAP well-known URI twice. So it is a cleaner approach. And the next slide, please. Another thing that we do is to send in the second and third message along with the IP message, we send in a superstructure the crypto suite negotiation, the values of the crypto suite negotiation, and we also send in the request and response the sender ID and response ID for OSCORE. This can also be reused as key ID for the TLS, as we will comment in the last part of the presentation. But this is the basic idea of this exchange. The next slide, please. So we maintain the use of OSCORE, in this case, in the basic exchange, as a way of confirming that the key material derived from the IP authentication is established correctly. And we double down on the use of OSCORE by establishing the OSCORE Security Association that could be used from that point on to secure any exchange between the IoT device and the controller. To do so, what we propose, and also I want to take a second to thank Christian Ansos for his input on this. We create a template, an incomplete OSCORE security context that is missing the key, which is completed after the authentication is completed. And what we do is that upon reception of the IP success, what we do is to complete the OSCORE security context and be able to complete the key confirmation. The detail here is that basically we generate the needed context, but we need to use the OSCORE message, the first OSCORE message, as a alternate success indication for IP, because the content is ciphered. So we use the first OSCORE message as an alternative success indication for the IP state machine to release the MSK and then complete the process. And with the recipient and sender ID that are now sent in the previous message, we are able to complete the whole process. The next slide, please. Basically, we also had a brief comment about the use of proxies, because in the exchange, there is a role reversal in IP from the first message, in which the IoT device acts as a co-op client, but on the rest of the exchange, it is a co-op server. So there is, that is something that needs to be considered when using proxies to send any needed information to the controller to be able to use the service through a proxy. So this additional information could be sent also in the server structure that it is defined. So we are preparing this structure. Maybe the next slide, I think, is there. Yes. So we define a server structure that carries some of the information that we need to exchange for cyber suite negotiation, the sender ID, recipient ID, also the authorization information such as session lifetime. Maybe we can, we put it as extensible. So maybe if we need in the future to add some additional information, we can do so in this structure to add maybe further feature or another functionality. So that's also integrated in the next version. And I think that we are close to the end. In here you can see the current exchange of operation. Now it is cleaner. We have abstracted ourselves from confirmable and non-confirmable messages and just focused on the basic exchange. There you can see how the context is created when the negotiation is done, and basically when the MSK is derived, it is used as in the seventh message to complete the OSCORE context and to send the eighth message confirming the key and finishing the co-op IP exchange. Lastly, in the last slide, we add in the annex some considerations for using for establishing a DTLS security association that could be used instead of OSCORE. And for this, we are reusing the same fields as OSCORE. We also do a crypto suite negotiation for DTLS. The key ID for the DTLS pre-shared key is generated, in this case, by concatenating the sender ID and recipient ID. And in here, as we do with OSCORE, we consider the client hello message from DTLS as an alternate success indication to be able to obtain from the IP state machine the MSK and be able to run the TLS. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time. If anyone has some comments.
Yeah, so from my point of view, the document is ready to be shipped to the ISG.
Mm-hmm.
So that's to me the next step for that document. So if anyone has concerns, if anyone see any issues, clarifications, I mean, it's time to show up, and you have until I would say the end of the week to raise your concerns. So I'm hearing no comments. I think that the document is pretty much ready. And I suggest that we move to the next presentation. So it's probably going to be Marco.
Yes, I can hear me.
Yeah.
Great. I can share the slides if it's okay to you.
Yeah, so you have to request this. Okay, yeah. Do you get those?
I think you'll have sharing as well.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you have to clear your sharing first before I can go on.
So I have to?
Stop sharing the slides yourself.
Oh yeah, I'm sharing those. Yeah, I thought it's so I sharing slides. Stop sharing slides. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, now requested.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Yes, this should be the one. This is an update on KeyGroupCom. Most of this was mentioned at the latest interim, so I'll be fairly quick. This revision was major, and it was about addressing two reviews we got from Working Group Last Call from Göran and Sigdem. Thank you very much for that. And to give a recap, most were clarifications on general terminology and use and semantics of some parameters and messages, both in the phases of token uploading to the KDC, and then later on joining process for a new candidate group member. Another clarification was related to the overall table of content, since text in the draft was parsed here and there with a lot of repetitions. So now it's much more linear, with error handling mentioned once and for all about its common general part when introducing the KDC interface. And then we go through the resources of the KDC one by one, followed by handler one, example, handler two, example, and so on. In terms of design changes, it was also agreed to bring into this document the definition already of some parameters that were otherwise defining KeyGroupCom OSCOR, where they remain used. And we define here some new parameters for enabling control messages that the KDC can send over multicast, and in particular, when using advanced group rekeying schemes. And related to that also, a resource about the public key of the KDC initially defining KeyGroupCom OSCOR was transferred here and remained used there. As requested especially by Göran, we also enforced the categorization of the parameters defined in this document and used in its messages as must, should, may be supported by devices, leaving some of them conditional to support, and leaving to profiles to have a final word on this as a requirement. And we categorized also functionalities that have to be minimally or additionally supported by devices, with profiles to follow this categorization, also for possibly even more new defined parameters. And also, we also gave some more guidelines on error handling when enhanced annual responses are used following overall the same rationale considered in the main ACE framework. As also requested in the reviews, we collected all the text we had sparse in the document about group rekeying. Now we have a single section about that, introducing the overall problem and task at hand. We introduced an optimization about possibly including public keys of just joined new members in the rekeying messages. And we gave high-level guidelines and examples about different approaches that can be used to perform a group rekeying, like the very basic one-to-one or one-to-many using pub/sub or multicast, but extreme details leading to actual content and encoding to use on the wire are up to yet other documents that should describe how a particular rekeying scheme is used in this context, possibly considering even the specific profile of this document. So as a summary, this version has addressed all the working group last call reviews, as far as I can tell, plus additional comments we got during the July meeting. So we also extended abstract and introduction to clarify even better the scope and the goals of this document in this ACE GroupCom landscape. And we also extended the security consideration to highlight the big amount of trust that we are putting on the KDC in the first place and what that implies. I'm not aware at this point of any other open issues or open points to address as authors. So we believe this is now ready for a next step, which should be Shepherd review and write up. That should be the last one. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So my comment will be similar to the previous presentation. Is that this document is going to be shipped to the ISG very soon. So if you have any concerns, please do raise them by the end of the week.
Okay, shall I switch to
I
the
think we
next
can
one?
go on with the next presentation.
Okay. Coming up. Okay, and this is Kigru Kamal score, a profile of the previous draft, specific for the use of Grupo score in groups. And everything I've done for this version was really adopting the changes done in ACE Kigru Com to make this draft consistent with the previous one. So moving out parameters and resources in terms of their definition, as I mentioned, was still used here, and a lot of alignment to be done in terms of terminology, parameter semantics, the optimization of possibly including public keys in wrecking messages, and so on. And the categorization of parameters and operations is now also enforced here, and this document is now overall following the updated list of requirements for profiles of ASCII-Com that we have now. Most of the clarifications that were done in ASCII-Com were also to be done again here for new parameters and resources defined brand new in this document. There was some clarification requested on who can access what resource to do what, and on error handling, and on IANA considerations, but relatively minor things, I would say. And really to summarize, I think this version 12 is now stable. Version 11 was already, but this is now aligned with the also stable and versions of KiguCom 14, and also of the Grupo score document in core. As a reminder, I have an implementation of this draft for Eclipse Californium, where the group manager acting as KDC supports both the group mode and pairwise mode as used in the score groups. Also about this document, I'm not aware of any further remaining issues or open points. So I think it can be considered now for working group last call. As a heads up, the Grupo score document in core is also going to approach its second working group last call, in fact, which is good. But of course, we cannot exclude altogether that the Grupo score document in core with possible future updates is going to affect this document in turn to adapt something. It is just the way it works as we keep updating the documents in the later stages. But right now, they are stable and consistent with one another. Yeah, this is my last slide.
Yeah, so my understanding for this document is that we will issue a working group last call very shortly. So you will have a 2 week window to make any comment. I would like people to commit to review that. So please, I mean, I don't want to waste a lot of time on that, but do we have anyone in the room that is planning to review the document? Okay, Karen, it's just you want to speak?
No, I just want to review.
Okay, good. So that's very helpful. Okay, so we will go through the working group last call, and thank you, Karen, for the review, and hopefully have that shipped by the end of the month. Thank you.
Thanks. So I know I have 2 more presentations in the agenda, but in the interest of time, which one should I pick?
So I suggest that we focus on the new adopted, potentially new work item to adopt. So I would encourage you to go to the token.
Okay. Yes, I'm happy to give an update on this one. It's now in version 6. I think it was presented last time in November last year, but of course we've kept working on it the whole year. So as a recap, the problem here is that access tokens can, of course, expire, but can be revoked for a number of reasons before they reach expiration time. And the problem is how to make this evident to the involved parties. So the clients and resource servers having an interest and involved in the use of that token. You have token introspection available, of course, but practically only for resource servers that in case have to take the initiative and request the authorization server to introspect 1 token at a time. This document, in addition, so to complement, not really replace introspection, defines a new service, a new interface at the authorization server, which basically keeps 1 single resource, a token revocation list intended to keep, let's say, short identifiers of tokens that are revoked at the moment, but not yet expired. And then both client and authorization and resource server, register that that authorization server can access that resource through a GET operation, possibly observe that resource, to be informed, possibly through automatic notifications about their pertaining access tokens that are revoked but not expired yet. And when doing so, they in fact retrieve information only about the tokens pertaining them, not really all of the access tokens issued by the authorization server. And there is really no need for new ACE endpoints here defined at client or resource server. This resource is at the authorization server. So for identifying these revoked tokens to inform about, we don't use the token CTI or anything like that. We actually compute a hash of the token using the 6920 approach of naming things with hashes. And the hash input is the only thing that all the 3 parties involved see as identical. So the value of the access token parameter in the response from the authorization server when the token is issued. And the resource at the authorization server is basically a list of the token hashes of the tokens that are revoked, but not expired yet. When registering at the authorization server, the client and resource server learn the exact URL where to contact the authorization server for the TRL endpoint, and well, can interact with it, as I said, to learn about the revoked access token. This can work actually in 3 different modes of operation, and the first one is very simple and mandatory to implement for the authorization server. Say the client, just like a resource server, can send a GET or GET observe request and retrieve back all the token hashes for the pertaining tokens that are revoked. There are 2 more advanced diff query modes. So the one in the middle requests for the most recent updates occurred most recently to the pertaining part of the TRL, so pertaining to the requesting node, and can be supported. We developed a 3rd mode out of input from Karsten about considering the series transfer pattern, and about Ben, I think at the November meeting last year, about considering retrieving not really the most recent updates, but actually the most recent updates following a certain resumption point in time. And putting things together, we actually developed this mode, which is currently an appendix, but we have an ambition to move it up to the document body. And it's now also detailed in terms of message payload, error handling, and so on. In the latest versions, other than developing the SDP-based mode, we added a number of clarifications about the different modes, the early registration process, and the error handling. We added the possible additional use of the PMAX attribute as a query parameter when requesting to observe that's something defined in the core working group. And basically, the client or resource server is really requesting the authorization server to send observed notifications here and there with maximum intervals of silence between one and another to be kept posted. And yeah, we defined a bit more in detail in the recent versions how to format the messages for the most advanced operation mode. Most recent review we got or comments on the list were from Michael Richardson about a number of very useful clarifications on different aspects of the document that are also integrated now in the latest version. So to sum up, this is an additional service that the authorization server can provide to both a client and resource servers to inform about access tokens that are revoked but not expired yet. That information can be accessed still in a polling fashion with simple gets, or it can also benefit from automatic notification using co-op observe. This is building on input from Carsten and Ben, especially on the advanced mode. Recent comments from Michael, and if you go back to old versions of the draft, we really built on initial comments from Jim and the review from Travis Spencer. The big next step we have in mind is moving the third most advanced mode of operation up to the document body and to integrate it better with the other two to make everything look more homogeneous. But otherwise, we think the document is stable in its latest version. And I'm aware of an ongoing implementation from CNR Research Institute in Italy. They are building on our implementation of the ACE framework on Eclipse Californium, and I'm assisting with that. So overall, we believe this is in a good shape to be considered to be adopted as a working document.
Okay, so anyone, I'd just like to understand how many people have read one of the version of that document. Please just raise your hands.
Some are also mentioned in this draft, in this slide, sorry.
Yeah.
For what is worth.
And how many people would like to review that document if adopted?
Christian says willing to review in the chat.
Okay. Anyone is opposed to this draft moving forward? Okay, so I'm hearing no opposition. So I will start a call for adoption. Please do state whether you're in favor or against very clearly, so that we can be something as in a parking lot for document. Okay, so thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
I suggest that we do a presentation on the TLS OS core profile, and that we then switch back to the GM admin from Marco, if time permits. And I suppose we will have time for that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Göran Selander, and I'm going to talk about this draft. This presentation is just one slide long, and you see the title of the draft here. The purpose of this draft is to discuss the applicability of another draft with the DTLS profile of the ACE framework to TLS. And the content of the draft, this was submitted late, I should say, so it was in the 2 weeks period between the submission deadline and the meeting, and we just uploaded that on Monday. as a compensation, this is a very short draft, so the content is essentially what's stated in this slide. It's saying that the DTLS profile of ACE applies to TLS as well as DTLS. And we could use the same access token, the same profile. So that's the content of this draft, and the rationale for using this is, for example, in case UDP might be blocked and you would rather use TLS and TCP for NAT and firewall traversal, for example. And there is another context as well, and that's that 3DPP has started looking at use of co-op, and in this service-based architecture where they already have adopted TLS 1.3 and OAuth 2.0. And when they now add co-op to this setting, ACE makes a natural solution to the authorization problem. So that's basically my presentation, and the question is for the working group is, first of all, do you think this is, do you like this? Do you agree with this this procedure of having a statement just about applicability of something? Do we need a separate draft? Can we solve it in some other way? Could we, for instance, consider including this sentence or this paragraph in the ACE DTLS authorize draft, which is currently in auth 48, so it's kind of late. Yeah, that's my question. Thank you. Any spontaneous answers? Do we have an AD in the meeting at the moment?
I think we have 2 ADs in the meeting at the moment, but the question was more direct. So, I mean, yes, you're right. From a technical sense, we could pull the details profile back from auth 48 and try to add to it. But that's a pretty heavy hammer at this point, and I feel like I would want to redo like the last call process and get some visibility into the IESG about it. And I'm fairly reluctant to take that approach. I guess I'm not going to rule it out entirely, but I think there is a fair bit of overhead, and I would want to get a fair bit of review to try and get this change in at such a late stage. And so my preference would be to not do that. And yes, it feels a little silly to do a 2-page document, but sometimes it might be the right choice. I'm also happy to hear if there are other opinions in the room.
Please, John.
Yeah, would it really need the last call? ISG added DTLS 1.3 without having a last call. I would say that's actually a bigger change than this change. I don't see any, the draft before mentioned some DTLS 1.2 details which have now been fixed, but for DTLS, I don't think there's any changes needed at all than just saying what this draft does, that this also works for TLS.
Right, I mean, that's sort of the trick. It looks like there's no changes needed, but I feel like I would want the review to confirm that there are no changes needed, because sometimes there can be subtle differences between TLS and TTLS that come up. I don't have an example off the top of my head because it's a little early in the morning today, but I feel like there have been some cases when I'm doing ISG review of other documents where they want to combine them together, and there's some subtle difference that needs special treatment. Usually, I think that would show up when you start with TLS and you're trying to add DTLS. It's less clear what the issues would be going the other direction, but I think there's enough of a risk that I don't want to just make the change at the last minute without actually giving it some thought.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for that. So what's your proposal? Do you want to review this and then make a decision, or is the decision or at least your strong recommendation here that we go for making it separate draft?
So I guess my queue is currently a little bit long, so I think my recommendation would be to go ahead and adopt this draft. And if I happen to have the time to look at it sooner, we could maybe short circuit that process. But I think adopting this draft would be a reliable process that we can get started on now and would not be blocking on me indefinitely.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Then I'm done with the presentation.
So one thing, it's not clear to me if it has been said, but to a little bit of context, my understanding is that the request to extend the DTLS profile to TLS, to address the TLS use case, has been raised by 3GPP. And so my recommendation is that we start a working group adoption for this document and move that document pretty fast. So I would like to have a lot of people to review this document that is shorter than the slide. So just as a short questions, I would like to see how many people have read or are willing to review this document. Please raise your hand. So we have only one person. Okay. Anyone opposed to that document to be? Okay. So I'm going to start a call for adoption. Keep in mind that we need to, when we adopt a document, we need to have a sufficient confidence that the document is going to end to be thrown to the ISG. So similarly to the previous document, clearly state whether you're going to review the document or you support it, and we'll see how it goes. I think we have time for Marco for your last GM presentation. So please go ahead.
Great. So I requested sharing powers. Can you grant them to me?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have it?
Yes. There we are. Okay. This is also an update about Oscar GMadmin, now version 4, and I think this was also presented last time, November last year. To recap, this is another RESTful interface at the same OSCORE group manager of the key group com OSCORE draft, but this interface is intended for administrator users to create, delete, configure, reconfigure the OSCORE groups that group manager is responsible for. Right now, we are already supporting interactions based both on link format and CBOR or with Coral. And bottom line, at the group manager, this interface exports a single root resource for the sake of creating new group configurations and retrieving the current list. And when a group is created, you have a child resource of this root resource. The child resource is associated to the specifically created group and contains as value the configuration currently used for that group. Clearly here, the ACE client is the administrator and the resource server is, again, the group manager. And to put all the functionalities in one slide, again, the root resource allows the administrator to create a new group or retrieve the list of existing groups, all of them or part of them using fetch with filtering criteria. And then for each child resource associated to a particular OSCO group, you can retrieve the current configuration, so the list of parameters describing how that group works, all of them or part of them through fetch. You can entirely override the current configuration with a new one using put, or as recently introduced, you can use patch for just selectively updating that configuration, altering only some parameters. Or you can delete altogether the group configuration, thus deleting the OSCO group altogether. What updates have we introduced in the last 3 versions? Error handling got improved mostly for the sake of chasing how that changed in ASP group com, from which we are reusing, again, the same content format and rationale for parameters and their semantics. We started to seriously build on an idea that Christian triggered when this document started about having multiple administrators, not only one, that can have to do with the same OSCO group. And the direction we are taking now is that you have for sure a primary administrator that creates a group configuration and can do anything on that. But at the same time, you can also have additional secondary administrators that might be allowed to do at least something on a group configuration they didn't create themselves. To practically enforce this, it is about defining the semantics of the scope we have in the access token for this kind of application. And we are not done yet, but we have sketched the technical direction we are taking already in a section we currently have as a placeholder. And that requires more work. Otherwise, as I mentioned, we have recently introduced the possibility to perform a selective update on the configuration on the OSCO group through patch. While if you do a put, you really override altogether a group configuration, and if you don't specify some parameter, you fall for default values. With patch, you really act on the only parameters you specify, making them take the exact new value you specify. It's pretty straightforward for most of the parameters. It's really about specifying the pair parameter name, new parameter value. There's an exception for a structured parameter, up groups, which is a list of names or a list of strings, if you want to think of that. So it's a bit more tricky with patch, but we have also defined how that can be handled. You basically have 2 possible ways, each with pros and cons. You can't combine them in the same request, but you can choose what better fits the particular request at hand. Also, we improved a bit how default values are handled, speaking of which. As I said, when creating a group or overriding its configuration, if a parameter is not specified, the group manager is supposed to consider a recommended default value. In case for some strong reason the group manager doesn't do that and goes for a different value than the recommended default one, the chosen value assigned to the parameter has to be included in the response given back to the administrator. That's good for consistency and good knowledge, and also for possible follow-up registrations at the resource directory for group discovery. But the details are all in the draft. We have also defined some new configuration parameters for the OSCO groups in case those OSCO groups allow the usage of cacheability of responses protected with OSCOR, and that mechanism is defined in another code draft. Here we just define the parameters describing how the group works in that respect, so that that information can be consistently provided to joining nodes when they join through the join interface defined in the other document. This reference here to core cacheable OSCOR is informative at the moment. I think it can remain informative because for the sake of this document, you don't really need to understand how the mechanics of cacheable OSCOR really work. You just need to pick up those 2 concepts here mapped into two parameters. So hopefully that can indeed remain an informative reference. But I'm happy to hear feedback in the other direction in case. Other than this, it was mostly about keeping this document up to date and aligned to changes happening in document related to it, meaning key group com OSCORE, and group OSCORE document in core. So that's just a summary of what I've just said for your convenience. Of course, we are not done yet. I think the main next step is defining in detail the semantics we want for scope in the tokens here, so that we can enable both a primary administrator creating a group and doing whatever it wants with that, but also possibly additional secondary administrator that can do something on groups they didn't create themselves. And again, we have a direction sketched pretty well in the draft already, but I was hoping that a discussion a bit more in detail around this to get early feedback can happen at some of the next ACE interim meeting, if possible, just to get early feedback. And that's it, I think. Comments, input are welcome, of course.
Any comment, please, Christian?
Yeah, just briefly on the topic of the informative reference to deterministic OSCORE. If that doesn't work out as an informative reference, it should be possible to just remove that part and move that part over to deterministic OSCORE, where it would then be published later. So I don't expect any showstopper there.
Yeah, I made a first attempt here because having this in the cacheable OSCORE document would require to bring up a lot of context from this draft that would make the other document a bit heavier. But yeah, in case we can go for it.
I prefer it to be here, but if it doesn't work out, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think we have 3 minutes left. So I'd like to give those 3 minutes to our AD if he has anything to say, and basically conclude this meeting. So thank you to all the presenters for making that happen, and that we were able to do all the agenda items during this meeting. And I'm leaving the floor to Ben and wishing you a happy IETF.
Yeah, thanks. Since you passed it over to me, I will just say that the main action item on my front relating to this working group is that the MQTT profile I know has published a revision. And I have not yet had a chance to look that over, but I expect that there will be a lot of good changes in there, and hopefully I can go directly to a IETF last call after that. I was trying to clear out my publication queue in the weeks leading up to this meeting, but I actually got a little bit sick, and that really disrupted my pace through the queue. So I'm feeling better now, and hope to continue during and after the meeting. That's the update from my end. Have a good IETF week, and we'll see you in Gather.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.